The candlelight danced across the dining table, casting shadows as Mark looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. It was his 34th birthday, and I had done everything I could to make the evening special. His favorite dinner, a bottle of Merlot, and a quiet night free from our phones. But the way his eyes rested on me, a mixture of doubt and fatigue, made the air feel heavier than the wine in my glass. "You've been distant lately, Claire," he said softly, his fork untouched on the plate. "You come home late. You guard your phone. You laugh at messages you don't share. I don't want to ruin tonight, but I have to ask, are you seeing someone else?" The question cut through the room like a blade hovering over my throat. I laughed, too quickly, too loudly. "Are you serious, Mark? On your birthday of all nights?" I forced a smirk, trying to mask my unease. "Should I just tell you I ran off with a millionaire and came back for dessert?" It was a joke, a deflection. But the moment I saw his face harden, I realized I had poured salt into a wound that had been bleeding for weeks. Mark pushed his chair back slowly. "That's not funny, Claire," he murmured. "Not when I asked you sincerely. Not when I already feel like I'm losing you." And just like that, his birthday dinner became the night he walked out. I hadn't thought he would actually leave. Mark had always been patient, sometimes painfully so. In 7 years of marriage, he had never slammed a door or thrown careless accusations. But that night, he simply picked up his coat, grabbed his keys, and walked away without raising his voice. The silence he left behind was deafening. At first, I was furious. Angry at him for ruining his own birthday. Angry at myself for the cruel joke. Angry at the unease that had been eating away at our marriage for months. But beneath the anger lay something far more dangerous, fear. Because Mark wasn't wrong. It began 3 months earlier. A new hire at our advertising firm, Dylan. Charismatic, sharp, effortlessly charming. He made the long office hours feel lighter. It wasn't that Mark and I were miserable. We weren't. We had just become muted. Life had slipped into routine. Work, bills, the occasional date night where both of us were too exhausted to talk about anything beyond the leaking faucet or the neighbor's barking dog. Dylan noticed things Mark hadn't in a long while. A new perfume. A haircut. The way I lingered at the coffee machine on Mondays. At first, it was harmless. Casual banter about deadlines, shared lunches, walking out to the parking lot together. But then came the late-night texts, the kind that made me smile when I should have been sleeping beside my husband. I kept telling myself it was innocent, meaningless. But guilt has a way of creeping into the smallest cracks. The way I started keeping my phone face down on the table. The way I pulled back when Mark's hand brushed mine in bed. The way I flinched when he asked, "Who's texting you this late?" That night, when Mark didn't come home, I called him twice. No answer. By morning, half his closet was empty and a note sat on the kitchen counter. "I didn't want this to be true. I warned you because I still loved you. But last night you gave me the answer I feared." No shouting. No threats. Just quiet devastation. He knew. I went to work that day in a fog, sitting across from Dylan in the conference room. He noticed my red eyes and asked if I was okay. I forced a smile, but the weight in my chest was unbearable. Suddenly, his attention didn't feel exciting anymore. It felt toxic. Mark didn't come home that night. Or the next. A mutual friend told me he was staying at his brother's. He hadn't filed anything yet, but his silence was louder than any argument we'd ever had. Days turned into weeks. Our conversations dwindled into cold, practical texts about bills and rent. Nothing about us. I stopped answering Dylan, stopped laughing at his jokes, stopped checking my phone after midnight. None of it mattered anymore. I wasn't ready to admit that I had thrown away my marriage for a few empty thrills. But every time I passed our wedding photo in the hallway, the truth gnawed at me. The breaking point came 2 weeks later, when I saw Mark at the grocery store. He looked thinner, worn, but his eyes were clear, clearer than mine had been in months. "Mark, wait," I called as he turned down the dairy aisle. He stopped, hands resting on the cart handle, but his face was unreadable. "Can we talk, please?" My voice cracked. Strangers passed by, some glancing, most not caring, but I felt like the world was watching me beg. There's nothing left to say, he replied, calm but cold. I told you what I feared. You didn't take me seriously. I didn't sleep with him. I blurted too loudly. A child giggled from the next aisle. Mark didn't flinch. Maybe not. But you joked about it. You let him live in your head, in your texts, in the silence between us. Do you know how humiliating that is? To be laughed at while I was trying to save our marriage. My lips parted, then closed. I wanted to scream that it was boredom, that I just wanted attention, that he hadn't been giving me enough. But I knew those were just excuses. The truth was simpler. I had crossed a line, and then mocked his pain when he confronted me. Mark, please. We can fix this. Counseling. Anything. He shook his head slowly. I spent months trying to fix us while you were busy entertaining someone else. I won't beg for your loyalty. And then he walked away again, this time leaving the store with nothing in his cart. The divorce papers arrived a month later. There was no shouting, no drawn-out trial. We had no kids, no house. Just 7 years of memories divided into boxes and signatures. I signed with trembling hands. Dylan reached out a few times after that. Said he missed our talks. Said he never meant for things to go so far. But every word felt like salt in a wound I had carved myself. I blocked his number eventually, not out of rage, but because I couldn't stand the reminder of what I had traded for nothing. Nights were the hardest. Lying in a half-empty bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment I could have chosen differently, setting the phone aside, saying no to the extra coffee, listening when Mark said he felt distance, holding his hand instead of mocking his fears. Love doesn't shatter in one blow. It dies in neglect, in small betrayals, in careless jokes at the worst possible time. Months later, I saw Mark again at a friend's engagement party. He was laughing with a woman I didn't know. She touched his arm as she told a story, and he leaned in, smiling easily. He looked lighter, freer. He noticed me across the room and gave a polite nod. No anger, just closure. And that's when I understood. He hadn't left because of the joke itself, but because that joke confirmed what he already feared, that I no longer respected the line we drew together when we promised loyalty. My laugh, meant to dismiss, became my confession.
If I could go back to that birthday night, I wouldn't cook a better meal or buy a fancier bottle of wine. I would have put the phone away months earlier. I would have met his eyes when he asked and told him the truth, that I was slipping, that I needed him to pull me back, that I didn't want anyone but him. But time doesn't bend for regret. It only deepens it. Now, when people ask why my marriage ended, I give them the truth, because I made a joke out of breaking his heart, and he finally chose to stop laughing. If this story resonates with you, share your thoughts below. Have you ever watched love fade away, one small choice at a time?